So this video is the part 2 of the concepts about the cash and cash equivalents. Particularly, we'll talk about the special cases and issues in the cash and cash equivalents. So first in the line is the bank overdraft. So first, let's have this illustration. So we have a depositor and a bank. So for example, yung depositor is nag-deposit siya ng 50,000 sa bangko. On the part of the depositor, meron siyang asset. So dito sa T account natin, the 50,000 will be on the debit side. So on the other hand, sa bangko, we all know that any cash receipts is recorded as a credit and any cash disbursement is recorded as a debit. So since naka-receive ang bangko ng deposit of 50,000, this will be credit side. So let us assume that this is a checking account. So yung depositor is nag-draw siya ng check sa account niya amounting to 60,000. So on the other hand sa bangko, since it is a cash disbursement or payment, it will be recorded on the debit side. However, ang problema natin is ang deposit lang niya is 50,000 pero ang nabawasan is 60,000. So, as a result, on the part of the depositor, meron siyang credit balance of 10,000. And sa bangko naman, meron siyang debit balance of 10,000 as well. So, this scenario is an example of a bank overdraft. So, the 10,000 is the amount of overdrawn account sa account ni depositor kaya nagkaroon siya ng credit balance. So, bank overdraft is defined as the credit balance or debit balance, whichever point of view, in the cash in bank account of the depositor. So, in the Philippines, prohibited to kasi meron tayong bouncing check laws na kung saan hindi allowed na magbigay ng cheque ang isang depositor or company na merong checking accounts if walang pondo. So, applicable lang tong bank overdraft na to mostly overseas or sa mga ibang bansa. So, how are we going to account yung overdraft na 10,000? So, as a general rule, the overdraft should not be offset against any other cash in bank accounts of the entity. And that portion of the overdraft will be presented separately as a current liability. Pero may exception to the rule. Exception is that offsetting is allowed if several cash-in banks are maintained in the same bank. So let's have this illustration. So the following are the accounts of the depositor in different banks. So the first is the BDO account number 001 amounting to 100,000. Next is BDO account number 002 amounting to credit balance of 20,000. So the credit balance is known as the bank overdraft. And lastly would be BPI account number 009 amounting to 50,000. So as a rule, offsetting is not allowed in the bank overdraft except if two or more accounts is maintained in the same bank. So in this illustration present yon, we have two accounts in the BDO. So and the other is the overdraft, so pwede natin siyang i-offset against the first one. So 100 less 20 na bank overdraft will give us a net overdraft of 80,000. So if asked how much is the cash in bank of the depositor, we just simply add the net overdraft of 80,000 to the BPI account amounting to 50,000. So meron tayong total cash in bank of 130,000. So, paano naman if yung 20,000 na overdraft is from another bank, for example, from PNB? So, the 20,000 will be presented separately as the current liability. So, pag tinanong kung ano yung cash in bank amount, so we just simply add the BDO account amounting to 100,000 and the BPA amounting to 50,000, totaling to 150,000 cash in bank. So, next special case is the compensating balance. It is defined as the minimum checking or demand deposit account balance that must be maintained in connection with a borrowing arrangement with a bank. So what does it mean? So for example, is nangutang ako ng malaking pera sa bangko amounting to 10 million. Since yung bangko hindi lang ako yung depositors nila, meron pa silang ibang depositors and makungutang sa bangko, and that 10 million is sobrang laki para sa kanila. So para hindi mabigla yung bangko na maglabas ng ganong kalaking pera is pwede nila akong bigyan ng loan of 10 million and i-ask na mag-deposit ako ng another 3 million sa bangko nila para nga hindi mabigla. So that 3 million na deposit is pagmamayari ko pa rin, pero i-deposit ko lang sa kanila para ma-compensate yung bangko. So that is why compensating balance yung tawag dito. So what would be the treatment nung deposit natin na 3 million? So if the 3 million deposit is not legally restricted as to withdrawal, it is part of cash. Diba cash is, if unrestricted, 'Di ba? Yun yung definition natin ng cash, unrestricted dapat. And what if naman if the deposit natin na 3 million is legally restricted as to withdrawal? So we have two classifications. So if it is short term, meaning less than a year, this will be presented separately as a cash held as compensating balance in the current assets. However, if long-term yung deposit natin na 3 million, it will be presented as a non-current investment in the non-current assets. So next issue would be is that when a check is drawn, recorded by the entity, but are undelivered and unreleased at the end of the reporting period. So ang nangyari dito is the entity nagbayad siya and nag-prepare ng cheque which is in good form and dated, pero it is undelivered pa kay payee. So since it is already recorded sa entity, nabawasan na yung kanyang cash in bank. So, we need an adjustment dito kasi nga at year end, understated ba yung cash natin in accounts payable because of the recording of the undelivered check. So, as a result, kailangan natin ng adjustment because the cash and the accounts payable natin is understated. So, that portion na ni-record natin will be added back to cash. So, by the issuance of the check amounting to 100,000 to pay the accounts payable dated December 31, 2020, we debit accounts payable and credit cash in bank amounting to 100,000. Pero kailangan natin itong i-adjust since the check remained undelivered at year end. So, we add back the cash, so we debit cash in bank and credit accounts payable amounting to 100,000 as well. So another issue is that when a check is written or drawn and recorded by the entity but are postdated at the end of the reporting period. So this time yung check na in-issue natin or ni-drawn is in good form and delivered to the payee. Pero postdated siya because of the check that is dated on January 10 pa. So postdated checks are those that are dated beyond or subsequent to the date of transaction. So para ma-consider na dated, dapat date at the date of transaction or earlier period pa doon. So, we needed adjustment to add it back to cash. So, by the issuance of the check, recorded accounts payable and credit cash in bank amounting to 100,000. So, we need an adjustment for that. So, balik natin yung cash in bank, debit, and credit accounts payable amounting to 100,000 as well. So, another issue is that when a check is written or drawn and recorded by the entity but are long outstanding or stale. So, yung mga stale checks are yung mga cheque na matagal nang hindi pa pinapa-encash. So, as time passes by, wala na tong halaga. So, to be considered stale checks, the period ranges between 5 to 6 months. So, ito yung usually na nangyayari. So, at the date of issuance of check on January 1, 2021, we debit accounts payable and credit cash in bank amounting to 500,000. So if after 6 months, since it is already stale checks, we added back sa cash in bank and credit miscellaneous income if the amount is immaterial. But if the amount is material and it is silent as to materiality, we just debit cash in bank and credit it back to accounts payable. So next is window dressing. So it is defined as opening the books of accounts beyond the close of the reporting period for the purpose of showing a better financial position or performance. So, this is a fraudulent reporting. Yung dinadaya mo yung results ng financial statements mo. So, kailan to usually ginagawa? So, for example, isa bangko and mangungutang ka. So, yung bangko, i-assess niya yung company mo, yung financial statement, if liquid ka ba. So, for example, if yung entity is may collection siya sa next year pa, ang ginawa niya is in-include niya yun for the current year para nga gumanda yung financial statement niya and para pautangin siya ng bangko. So that is window dressing and it is a fraudulent reporting. So next special case would be delapping. So it is a series of postponements of recording of the entries for collections from customers. So for example, sa isang entity, ang accountant and ang mamanage ng collection ng money as well as recording is iisang tao lang. So for example, the entity, inutusan niya yung tao na yon na maningil ng utang niya sa kanyang mga customers. So on November 1, 2020, yung customer A na pinuntahan niya is nagbayad ng 10,000 pero hindi ni-record. So the following day, noong November 2, yung customer B naman is nagbayad ng 20,000. So this time, ang re-record niya is debit cash in bank and credit accounts receivable amounting to 10,000. So yung pinayad nauna ni customer A na 10,000, nung nagbayad si customer B, dun pa lang niya ni-record yon. So kaya LAP yung tinatawag dito, series of postponements of recording ng collections from customers. So kailan to nangyayari? So since stated kanina na yung accountant which is responsible for the collection of money at saka yung nagre-record keeping is iisang tao lang, so pwedeng magkaroon ng fraudulent actions yung tao na yon. That's why kailangan ng segregation ng incompatible functions sa mga businesses. So yung sample natin is may violation ng internal control. So dapat iba yung person na nagfa-facilitate sa record keeping at saka yung custody of cash para ma-avoid yung fraudulent act na yun. So if hindi naman kaya na magkaroon ng segregation ng incompatible functions, supervision yung kailangan ng entity. So that's why it's very important na dapat mayroong segregation of the incompatible function as well as supervision to avoid fraudulent actions ng ating mga employees. So next is kiting. So in here, a check is drawn against the first bank and depositing the same check in the second bank to go for the shortage in the latter bank. So by that, no entry is made for both drawings and deposit of the check. So, for example, is yung accountant sa bank 1 is may cash ng 100,000. Wala naman talaga dapat babayaran pero yung accountant is nag-prepare siya ng cheque para ibigay niya sa kamag-anak niya. So, sa pagbibigay niya ng cheque na yun, no entry was made. Wala siyang ginawa kahit ano. So, anong tawag dito? It is a fraudulent disbursement. So, per record, 100,000 yung cash pero in actual, 90,000 lang. So, merong shortage sa cash in bank. So, para ma-cover up yung shortage na to, ang ginawa ni accountant sa other bank, ang ginawa niya is nag-issue siya ng cheque and dineposit yon in the name ni Bank 1. So, yung deposit na yun is mako-cover up niya yung shortage na yun. So, in short, in effect, parang 100,000 pa rin yung cash kasi nga dahil sa deposit na 10,000. So, dun sa other bank naman, since may clearing time, kaya hindi pa agad makikita yung effect ng transaction. So, there's a continuation of this video and it will be about the cash shortage or overage and the petty cash fund.